Most heart attacks don't start with a clogged artery. They start with a microscopic storm, a small invisible wound inside the artery wall. And here's the part no one likes to think about. That storm begins decades before symptoms, sometimes before high school. By the time someone hits their 40s or 50s, the real question isn't whether atherosclerosis has begun. It's how far it's already gone. Because by the time we are reacting to an elevated LDL-C or a coronary calcium score, the groundwork has been quietly laid for years. So today, let's zoom in, literally inside the artery wall, and trace this disease from its very first spark. From the moment an ApoB-containing particle sneaks beneath the endothelium, to the slow simmering inflammation that follows, to the day a plaque finally stops being silent. You'll walk away seeing cholesterol numbers in a completely different light, not as abstract labs, but as a daily pressure on the artery wall. Welcome to LipidCurious, the podcast dedicated to demystifying lipids for medical boards and real-world clinical practice. I'm your host, Dr. Vishnupriya Pulipati, a board-certified endocrinologist and lipidologist. This is Season 1, Episode 9, Atherosclerosis, the slow burn beneath the surface. Here's what we'll tackle today. 1. Anatomy and birth of an atherosclerotic plaque. 2. Why some arteries are more prone to atherosclerosis. 3. Seeing, treating, and reversing atherosclerosis. If you're new here, welcome. This entire season builds up step by step. For the full picture, I recommend starting at Episode 1. You'll find bonus visual handout for everything from Season 1, plus a free starter kit at www.lipidcurious.com. And a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only, not medical advice. All right, let's get started. Arteries are like flexible muscular tubes, lined inside with an extraordinary single paper-thin layer of cells called the endothelium. This lining is your body's non-stick coating. Smooth, frictionless, and protective. It keeps the blood flowing, prevents clotting, regulates inflammation, and maintains vascular tone. However, when that endothelial lining becomes inflamed or injured, either from years of high ApoB exposure, smoking, hypertension, or high glucose levels, it turns into a sticky Velcro-like surface. This invites ApoB-containing lipoproteins such as LDL floating in the bloodstream to slip beneath the endothelial surface, which get trapped in the innermost layer of the artery wall called the intima. Now the story heats up. Inside this wall, LDL wanders into a very rough neighborhood, full of free radicals. These are unstable molecules which are missing an electron and eager to steal an electron from another molecule. Free radicals are produced naturally as a part of cellular metabolism. But smoking, air pollution, and chronic inflammation significantly increases their numbers. And when these free radicals find LDL nearby, bam, they snatch an electron, damaging the LDL. Our once innocent LDL now becomes oxidized LDL, the real troublemaker in this story. Oxidation isn't a single event. It's fueled by free radicals, by enzymes such as myeloperoxidase and lipoxygenase, by heavy metals such as iron and copper, by autoantibodies, and by plain old inflammation. Oxidation is a biochemical process that transforms LDL from an helper to a hazardous oxidized LDL. Once oxidized, LDL goes into rogue mode. It wreaks havoc in 4 significant ways. 1. It injures the endothelium. 2. It creates foam cells. 3. It stimulates smooth muscle migration and proliferation. 4. It activates platelets. Here's how that unfolds. The injured endothelium sends distress signals, adhesion molecules, to which monocytes floating in the bloodstream, which are the immune cells, respond. And they slip inside the endothelium to take a look into the arterial wall and see what's the problem. Inside the arterial wall, they turn into macrophages, the cleanup crew. Macrophages start swallowing up oxidized LDL through scavenger receptors. They swell up and become full of fat, and they're called foam cells. They look like tiny fat-filled bubbles. Clusters of these foam cells form fatty streaks, the earliest visible sign of atherosclerosis. And yes, we can see these in teenagers as well. Now, these foam cells have become a part of the problem. Good intention, but bad outcome. Foam cells don't sit quietly. They release inflammatory cytokines, reactive oxygen species, calling in more immune cells and worsening the storm. Some foam cells die and dumping the lipid debris into the wall, creating the necrotic core of an atherosclerotic plaque. Meanwhile, the smooth muscle cells, which are usually chilling in the media or the middle layer of this arterial wall, are lured into the intima by growth factors. They multiply in this intima layer, lay down collagen, and try to patch the area. This creates a fibrous cap, strong enough to cover the plaque, fragile enough to rupture. As foam cells, lipids, collagen build, the artery stiffens and remodels. And oxidized LDL keeps activating platelets, priming the wall for atherothrombosis, the clot that turns the quiet disease into a heart attack. So as you can see, a plaque isn't a static clog. It's a living, dynamic tissue with chronic inflammation. It is stabilizing, growing, or destabilizing depending on the daily tug of war between injury and repair. When someone says my blockage happened overnight, what really happened was decades of quiet remodeling that finally tipped over. Atherosclerosis is slow, smoldering volcano. You don't notice it until it erupts. Next, why some arteries are more prone to atherosclerosis. You must have noticed two people with the same LDL sometimes walk out with completely different futures. One has a pristine CTA, another is scheduling a stent. Same cholesterol, different destinies. Why? Well, these are some of the factors which play in. 1. Genetics. Some people unfortunately inherit higher ApoB particle count or elevated lipoprotein little. Even normal cholesterol hits harder in these arteries. 2. Inflammation. Diabetes, obesity, smoking, hypertension all make the endothelium leaky, irritable. One person has smooth, resilient surface and the other one has a sticky Velcro-like endothelium. 3. Blood flow. Plaques form at bends and curvatures and branch points where the shear stress is low. It's like the quiet eddies of a river. Put these together, genetics, inflammation, and turbulent flow, and you can see why one patient develops plaque like concrete and another barely forms a streak. And it also explains why some people with great numbers end up in the cath lab, while others with modest elevations never do. Because atherosclerosis isn't just about how high LDL is. It's about how long the artery has been exposed to ApoB and how reactive that vessel wall is to that exposure. This is where CAC scoring and plaque imaging shine. They measure the actual disease, not just the risk factors. Cholesterol definitely lights the match, but genetics, inflammation, vessel biology, and time decide how fast that fire spreads and where it burns first. Next, seeing, treating, and reversing atherosclerosis. Here's where things finally turn hopeful. Once you can see atherosclerosis, you can target it precisely. Let's start by understanding the different types of plaques. Stable plaque built up slowly over the time. They harden the artery wall and are much less likely to rupture. vulnerable or rupture-prone plaques are the real troublemakers. They have a large, soft, lipid-rich cores covered by a thin, inflamed cap. They're almost like a fat-filled blister sitting under tension, just waiting to pop. They make up to 10 to 20% of all the plaques, but they cause 80 to 90% of acute cardiac events. And then we have the complicated or erosion-prone plaques. These don't rupture. Instead, the fibrous cap stays intact, but the surface layer of the endothelial cell erodes. That superficial erosion sparks clot formation right on top of the plaque, leading to the same downstream danger of thrombosis. Okay, next let's talk about what type of imaging are available to look at this atherosclerosis. Non-invasive first. Calcium scoring is great for asymptomatic intermediate risk adults, but a zero score in symptomatic patients is not really reassuring. That's the zero calcium paradox, because the calcium score only shows calcified plaque, not the soft vulnerable plaques. Coronary CTA, coronary MRA, PET-CT can detect the soft plaques, inflammation, and remodeling. Carotid ultrasound and ankle brachial index offer some systemic clues as well. Next up is the invasive imaging. Optical coherence tomography gives a microscopic detail. It will show you the exact way the atherosclerosis looks. The fibrous cap thickness, how much lipid, how many macrophage clusters. The second version is intravascular ultrasound with near-infrared spectroscopy. This shows plaque structure and chemical composition, especially its lipid content. The invasive imaging is rarely used. We mostly use the non-invasive imaging. These aren't just diagnostic toys. They are a window into the biology of the arterial wall. Now here's the good news. Biology is modifiable. Let's talk about medications. Statins stabilize plaques, thicken the fibrous cap, reduce inflammation, increase the dense calcium. So the calcium score looks worse, but the plaque is safer. That is why we don't really encourage doing a calcium scores while on statin, as it might be misleading. 2. Ezetimibe reduced plaque volume and thickens the caps. 3. PCSK9 inhibitors regress the lipid-rich plaque and cool inflammation. 4. Inclisiran, bempedoic acid reduce inflammation and stabilize the plaque. 5. Fibrates reduce thrombogenicity. 6. Omega-3 fatty acids stabilize plaques and reduce inflammatory cytokines. So all the good cholesterol-lowering medications impact the atherosclerotic some way or the other in a positive way. Now, in other news, GLP-1 receptor agonist and SGLT2 inhibitors improve the metabolic tone and endothelial health and can also help with stabilizing atherosclerosis. Can we reverse atherosclerosis? Well, partially biologically, yes, but not geometrically. Regression means lipid core shrinks, fibrous cap thickens, inflammation calms down, and the plaque becomes quiet. You have turned an active volcano into a dormant one, and that is success. And this is why lipid management isn't about chasing a number. It's about changing the biology of an arterial wall. If everyone could see their disease, we'd treat the risk far earlier with far more purpose. Here are the take-home points of this episode. 1. Atherosclerosis begins early and silently, long before the symptoms. 2. Imaging reveals plaque biology that LDL alone can't. 3. Lowering ApoB and inflammation stabilizes and can regress the plaque. All right, folks, our next episode drops in 2 weeks. We will be wrapping up season 1 then. Thanks for tuning into LipidCurious. I am genuinely thankful for all the encouragement and feedback. It's been incredibly uplifting. If today's episode was helpful, share it with a friend or a colleague. I'd love to hear your feedback or topic suggestions or collaboration ideas. You can always reach out to me at hello@lipidcurious.com. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss what's next. And don't forget, you can grab the free starter kit and Season 1 visual guide at www.lipidcurious.com. Until next time, stay curious and stay confident. Signing off, Dr. Pulipati.